And we are now recording.
All right, good deal. Thank you. And thank you, Chris. Yeah, my name is David Blewett, City Councilman for District 14, which includes Richmond Avenue that we're going to be talking about tonight. This is an open community meeting being put together by city staff. And Chris Turner was talking for a second ago, and I believe that Robert Perez, I think I saw him on this call somewhere. So she is the city engineer, and he is the director of public works, and they're the primary people. I believe Chris will be running the show tonight, correct?
Correct, sir.
So this is being put on by city staff. I'm here mainly because it's in my district, because it's an important project. I've gotten a lot of feedback, and we're going to have some more feedback. I will tell you that I do have a hard stop at 6:30, so I will have to go. But the staff will continue on the presentation. Everything you tell them will end up coming back to my office, because I'm very well aware of the challenges that this street has with the width and with the things that we're trying to do, and some of the concerns, well, all of you that are here, the concerns that all of you have. So I will keep my comments short, because I do want to get as much of the presentation in as possible, so I can leave it, like I said, my hard stop. And with that, Chris, I appreciate the opportunity to listen to, this is our second community meeting, correct?
Yes, it is, sir.
Okay, so I'll let you take it away from here, and thank you all for being here tonight. This is, like I said, an incredibly important street, east-west, to connect other north-south streets and neighborhoods together. I take this very serious. To me, I think it is the biggest street reconstruction that I face, just because of the importance of what it can do for the East Dallas neighborhoods. So, Chris, thank you.
Thank you, council member. With that, I'll come back and allow city staff to introduce themselves, starting with Robert Perez.
Hey, good. My name is Robert Perez, Director of Public Works. Thank you all for being here this evening.
And then let's go with Hytham.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Hytham Hassan. I'm Assistant City Engineer. I work with Chris and Robert with Public Works. Thank you.
And then Dia.
I'm Dia Tommy. Good evening. I'm the project manager at the city side.
And then transportation staff, I believe we have Catherine.
Yeah, this is Catherine West, planner, Department of Transportation, and it looks like I also have Jessica Scott here with me.
Jessica Scott, I'm the bicycle mobility manager for the city of Dallas.
Yeah, other than Ryan, are there other city staff on the line that I've missed? Okay, with that, I'm going to go ahead and bring up the presentation. And
sorry about that, Chris. Just briefly, if we could, for the users that we have on calling in on conference call, for record keeping purposes, what we're going to do is go one by one and say the last 4 digits of the phone number. And if you wouldn't mind, go ahead and tell us your name, so that way we have it for the record. Up first, I see a 9591. 214-9591. Could you state your name? Okay, moving on to 6306. Okay, we'll move on to the next number, 5536. If you could state your name for us for record keeping.
Marie Rolay.
All right, thank you, Marie. Up next, I see a 6591.
Julianne Bowersock.
Thank you for that. Let's see, 7077.
Yes, Kevin Fry, F-R-Y-E.
Thank you, Kevin. We have a 1390.
Monique Jeanette.
Thank you, Monique. We have 4379.
Rita Bowersock.
Thank you, Rita. Up next, we have 2818.
My name is Robert Graham.
Thank you, Robert. And the last number I see there is a 7989.
Randolph Strang, S-T-R-E-N-G, 6213, 6215 Richmond Avenue.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Okay, and then I see we have one more number added in. Whoever is 9412, if you could state your name for record keeping purposes for the meeting.
Kiara Hernandez.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, Chris, you can go ahead.
All right, thank you all. Just to conserve bandwidth, I did turn my camera off. I don't want to cut out in the middle of the presentation, so I apologize about that. But just to let you know, we are doing audio and video recording so that we have a record of this meeting that we will post on the website when the meeting is done. And as Ryan did, he just went through to basically collect the names of the folks that only have their phone numbers showing. We will use the attendance list as a record of who was actually at the meeting. So we'll have the list of attendees, but when we only have your phone number, we're just trying to get your name to associate with that phone number. So questions and answers, as Ryan mentioned, it would be helpful if you could submit your questions and comments via the chat box. The questions will be reviewed by our team and a response prepared by the end of the presentation. If we do need to provide a more detailed response, a response will be posted to our project website within 30 days. If you've called into this meeting and wish to submit questions or comments, you can email Dia at the email address you see here, or Ryan at the email address you see there.
Want to submit a question?
And if we could please have everyone mute their microphones, it would be very helpful.
Mm-hmm. And for those of us on conference call, if you don't have a mute function, you're going to want to press *6 on your keypad, and that'll keep you from posting any audio.
Thank you. So our agenda for the meeting tonight, we're going to talk about the general project information. We're going to talk about the feedback we received from the October 29th, 2020 public meeting. We'll speak about refined improvement options for the roadway, other potential project elements, how you provide your input, next steps, and then contact information for the project. So looking at the project, this project is located on Richmond Avenue between Abrams and Matilda Street. And just looking at the average daily traffic on the roadway, we do have 6,500 vehicles per day as of July 2016, and 6,100 vehicles per day were recorded in 2019. The 2017 bond project did approve funds to do a pavement overlay on Richmond between Matilda and Abrams Road at about $1.275 million. The intent of the project is to include bike lanes, physical bump outs at designated street crossings, enhanced painted crosswalks, and new flashing beacons at selected crosswalks, dependent upon funding and approval guidelines. The Richmond and Skillman intersection will also be reconstructed to remove the channelized right turn lanes and install the new traffic signal. And there's about $350,000 in the budget for that. So at our October 29th, 2020 meeting, we did have a public survey that basically we asked you 5 primary questions. The first one being, what do you like about Richmond Avenue? The second, what should the primary goal be for the project? The third being, what's your connection with Richmond Avenue? The last question was, what other improvements would you like to see made to Richmond between Matilda and Abrams? And then we had preliminary improvement options 1 through 5. So we're going to talk a little bit about what the feedback we received from the survey was. So we had 314 responses that came in. There were 37 that were very obvious duplicates. So we had 277 total responses. And regarding the question of what do you like about Richmond Avenue, some of our most popular responses were not much and nothing. We had about a total of 27 of those. Being able to park on both sides of the street and street parking, we had about 30 responses there. A lot of folks talked about the neighborhood and the community, about 27 responses. And then we had about 19 responses regarding a wide street. Looking at question number 2, what should the primary goal be for this project? we had provided 5 options. The first one being slow traffic. The second one, improve safety. The third, improve the appearance of Richmond. The fourth being to provide options for alternative modes of travel, such as biking, scooters, and etc. And the last one being other, which required people to enter text. So what was very interesting, and if you can see my cursor moving here, is that about 40% of the respondents actually put all of the above, which probably should have been an option that we put here, but you guys made it up and did it yourself. We had 18% that indicated they wanted to slow traffic, 10.83% the options for alternative modes of traffic, 8.66% to improve safety, 5.78% to improve the appearance. Now, one thing that was very interesting was that about 10.83% of the respondents indicated they wanted dedicated parking on both sides of the roadway. And then we also had about 4.33% of the respondents indicated they wanted a smooth street. So those were some of the ones that when people were entering text that we were able to really hone in on about dedicated parking and smooth the street. Looking at question 3 in terms of what is your connection to Richmond Avenue, the options that we provided were you worked within 2 blocks of Richmond, you lived within 2 blocks of Richmond, commuted using Richmond, or you visited businesses along Richmond, and then there was an other category that required you to enter text. And interestingly enough, 16.61% of the respondents made up their own category that you live on Richmond. And if you look, we had 58.84% of the respondents respond that they lived within 2 blocks. 16.61% said they lived on the street. And totaling these two numbers, it's 75% of the respondents either live within 2 blocks or are on the street. So what this tells us is we really captured the audience that we were looking for. We captured the folks that live on Richmond and that are part of this project. And that was really what we wanted to achieve as part of the survey, is getting the input from the folks that this is really going to impact the most. So what other improvements would you like to see along Richmond? There were quite a few comments on here, but some of the main ones, physical traffic calming elements such as speed tables, concrete bump outs, and speed humps. We had 81 folks ask for that. We had 22 respondents indicate dedicated parking on both sides of the roadway. Dedicated bike lanes was another popular one with about 35 respondents. Continuous and wider sidewalks had about 12 folks. 17 folks talked about crosswalks, and then 61 folks indicated landscaping. So looking at the preliminary improvement options that we provided at the last meeting, we had 5 options just to remind you. So we'll go through these one by one. So option 1 was really no change, which leaves it with 2 13-foot travel lanes and the 2 9-foot parking lanes on the sides. Option 2 was protected street parking on both sides of the roadway with shared bike lanes. Option 3 provided one side parallel parking and designated bike lanes. Option 4 provided one side parallel parking and designated bike lanes, but that bike lane was parking protected, which indicated that the parking lane right here was between the drive lane and that bike lane. And the last option had one side parallel parking and one side designated cycle track bike lanes. So what we'd asked respondents to do was to go through and respond 1 through 5 if they wanted the cross section yes or no. So the feedback that we got, the no's are the blue columns and the yeses are the orange columns. So overwhelmingly out of our 277 respondents, no one wants the roadway to remain as it is. Option 2 also wasn't super popular in terms of the protected street parking on both sides with the shared bike lanes. Option 3 with the one side parallel parking and the designated bike lanes was our most popular option. And then 4 and 5 were a little bit less popular. Now, what we did after we received all this feedback and condensed it, was we looked at what most people were looking for, which was one side parallel parking and designated bike lanes, not parking protected. But the other thing that we had to look at was we got a lot of comments regarding the parking and not taking the parking away. So what we've done is we've provided some refined improvement options. Option A is protected street parking on both sides with shared bike lanes. And basically, this is the former option 2 that we presented to you during the round 1 public engagement. When we went through and looked at different typical sections, we looked at every possible way that we could try and provide parking on both sides of the roadway, along with bike lanes. And there just is not enough real estate between the curbs to be able to safely make that happen. So option B that we came up with is one side parallel parking and buffered bike lanes, not parking protected, which this is a variation and very similar to option 3 that was presented during round 1. But the changes that have been made is that the travel lanes have been reduced to 10.5 feet each. We've introduced basically 2.5-foot buffers on both sides between the bike lanes and the travel lanes. And then we have this 8-foot parking lane. So we do have a survey that we're going to be requesting that you fill out as part of this meeting. And basically you're going to have an option to choose option A or option B. And again, what we're trying to achieve is basically the only way that we can put parking on both sides of the roadway and still maintain traffic is to basically provide a shared travel lane and bicycle lane and provide those 2 parking lanes on both sides. If dedicated dedicated bicycle lanes are what are desired, we're only able to provide parking on one side of the roadway. So another part of the survey will ask if option B, if this option is the one that is selected for the project, do you prefer to have parking on the north side of the street or the south side of the roadway? So we're looking to make sure we have input on that. So the other potential project elements that we discussed at our last meeting, we have the rectangular rapid flashing beacons, which these are directional high intensity lights that are visible at all hours to make crosswalks more visible. We have speed tables, which are flat top speed humps covering the entire width of the roadway. And when outfitted with crosswalk markings and signage, the speed table becomes a raised crosswalk essentially. And then we have curb bump outs, which these are traffic calming measures, which widen the sidewalk for a short distance, and it will reduce the crossing distance and allow pedestrians and drivers to see each other better when parked vehicles are otherwise blocking visibility. So looking at these potential project elements, looking back, the symbols, this symbol right here is the symbol for a speed table. So we're looking at placing speed tables at Cecile right here, and then placing one at Alderson over here. Looking at the RRFB symbol, that's the one right down here. We're looking at placing an RRFB at Del Mar right here. And then looking at bump outs, if we come from east to west, we're looking at a bump out at Kidwell Street. We're looking at bump outs at Alderson, at Empire Drive, at Cecile Street, at Concho Street, at Del Mar, and then at Matilda Street. So those are the proposed traffic calming elements that we have in the project. Then we are, as I mentioned, redoing the Richmond and Skillman intersection. Currently, this intersection, if you look east and you're going east, has a free flow right turn lane that goes onto Skillman. And if you're coming west, you have the same thing. You have a free flow right turn lane. So one of the things that we're doing as part of this project is we're eliminating those free flow right turn lanes. We're installing new barrier-free ramps on all 4 corners. We're installing a new traffic signal. We'll have one through lane of traffic each direction on Richmond, and then we have our planned bicycle lanes. So we are asking for your input in terms of which refined option do you prefer. You can see we have surveys up here in English and in Spanish, and we have the QR codes here. You can actually hold your phone up to the screen right now and hit one of these QR codes, and it will take you right to that survey. Or you have the bit.ly link here as well to refer back to. Now, we are requesting, or actually not requesting, it is mandatory to fill out the survey to enter an email address. And we did not do this on the last survey. We're doing it this time to try and cut down on the number of duplicate responses that we receive. So the surveys are set up in Google. So you do have to have some type of a Google account, and it will ask you for an email address to do the survey. The deadline to provide input is March 16th. That's 10 working days from today. So again, we want your input on which option, which refined option you prefer, option A or option B. And if option B is selected for the project, do you prefer parking on the north or the south side of the road? So our next steps, we're going to be collecting our community feedback, which, as I just mentioned, is due March 16th. We'll evaluate that feedback and select the preferred alternative by March 30th. We will post that preferred alternative on the project blog site by April 2nd. We'll be working through the month of April to finalize our design. That will be completed between April 23rd and April 30th. And we'll be starting construction between April 26th and April 30th. And then our construction timeline is approximately 12 months. Contact information for the project. As you heard, Dia is our project manager. Ryan is our public relations coordinator, and I'm our city engineer. You have our email addresses here. And here is the location for the project website as well. That is the end of the formal presentation. So with that, I'll close that out, and we will open it up for questions.
Okay, so I see that we have a lot of questions in the chat, but I also saw earlier, Melanie, you had your hand raised as well. So if you would like, you could go ahead and unmute yourself and make your comments or ask questions, and then we'll move on to the chat questions.
Yeah, I was just on my screen. I don't see a place to type in questions. So I was just going to ask for everybody, where is that?
There should be a chat window box or option that it has an option to show or hide conversation if you have the Teams app downloaded on your computer, or if you're coming in through a browser window, there should be a chat option available for you as well. Let me double check to make sure it's visible.
I'm having the same issue here. I'm not getting a chat option on Teams.
Got you.
If you're on your phone, tap the screen and it'll show up at the top.
I'm not seeing the chat option either, and I use Teams regularly.
Well, while we're getting that figured out, if we could go ahead, and I will try to see if I could, tell you exactly where that is, but I've got to do some research on the back end here. In the meantime, David, I did see that you had a lot of questions that you had submitted. I don't know if some of those were answered as part of the presentation, but if you are available to, you could go ahead and unmute and ask some of those questions now of the staff as well.
Sure. I mean, Ryan, is it easier for you to read the questions or for me? It doesn't matter to me. Yeah, what's best for you?
In this case, it might be easier for you to kind of hit your questions one by one, just because I want to make sure that we get for the folks who are having trouble with the chat window, making sure that that's accessible for them. So
no worries. The city's presenting two radically different options for Richmond's future. If you assume that the same traffic calming is done for either option, explain to us the differences between the two options. One has vehicular lanes of 13.
Hang on, hey, David.
Yes.
David, I'm going to cut you off for 1 second real quick. First of all, David Shin and I have gone back and forth on this project quite a bit, so I'm not being rude, and I think we're friends on this deal, but I told people at the beginning I had to leave at 6:30 hard. So it's 6:26, and I know the detail you're going to get into. I just want to be very clear. I'm going to get all this information. This is very serious to me. It's very serious to city staff, and I apologize for having to leave, but I wanted to be here to set this up. And David, I think I know where you're going with this, so I love you, and I know you're going to ask some great questions. I'm going to get some good answers for you. So I apologize for leaving, but David, thank you, and I apologize for interrupting.
No worries. Have a good debate.
Yeah, thanks.
Hello. This is Martha Heimberg, and I'm in my car, and I'm phoning in because I'm en route to getting home, but I wanted to phone in and say I am 100% for the bike lanes on Richmond. Anybody here? Hello?
Yes,
ma'am.
sorry.
Thank
We
you.
heard your comments, Martha. Thank you. We appreciate that.
Thank
Do you live on Richmond, Martha?
I do not live on Richmond. I live on Abrams Road with a bike lane in front of me that will adjoin the Richmond bike lane once it is completed. And I think that alone is a good reason. If we've got a network leading to it from our home and downtown, then it would be good to continue it on Richmond.
Gotcha. Well, we thank you for your comments. We will go ahead and move back. David, if you wouldn't mind continuing with where you left off.
Oh, no worries. And Martha, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Martha.
You're welcome. I'm listening.
So okay, the city's presenting two radically different options for Richmond's future. If you assume that the same traffic calming is done for either, if you would please explain to us the differences between the two options. One has vehicular lanes that are 13 feet wide, which is wider than interstate highway vehicular lanes. The other has 10.5-foot lanes. How does that affect traffic speeds and safety? The second big difference is you have buffered bike lanes versus sharrows, which are single traffic lanes that are shared by bikes and cars. Again, safety for bicyclists and cars. Third, parking volumes on Richmond. I know that a parking study wasn't done, but my informal parking study has shown no more than 55 parked cars on Richmond at any one point in time. Is one-sided street parking adequate for that number? That's my first question. And I realize it's a long and complicated one.
Thank you for acknowledging that, David.
David, I've got a question for your informal parking study. What stretch of Richmond was included in that? Was that from Matilda to Abrams, or was it? Just...
Yeah, no, I would ride Matilda to Abrams at varying times of day and night because I was curious. I mean, I'd ride at 7 o'clock in the morning to see what we had for overnight traffic. I'd ride at midnight to see who was parked there overnight. I'd ride at 2 o'clock in the afternoon or 9 o'clock in the morning. And I did this, again, this is nothing empirical except for my numbers. And for example, last Tuesday night at midnight, there were 36 cars parked on Richmond between Abrams and Matilda. There were 20 cars between Abrams and Skillman and 16 cars between Skillman and Matilda. Of the 20 cars between Abrams and Skillman, 8 of them were parked in front of an apartment complex at Richmond and Alderson. The next afternoon at 4:30 in the afternoon, there were 44 cars parked on Richmond.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify.
Oh, no worries. Yeah, no, I tried to be consistent in the area, and again, I was counting. I was making no designation and counting between north side and south side. It was just sheer numbers.
Got it.
And just to
And
pause
David, I
really
think it's complete
quickly.
guesswork, but as a question for you, do you think that COVID has led to a decrease in the amount of parked cars on Richmond compared to what it would have been in 2019?
No, not at all. I actually think that COVID has contributed to more cars parked on Richmond than less because of the number of people who are working from home. I do also think that there's a marked difference in cars parked overnight versus cars parked during the day. There are more cars consistently parked during the day on Richmond than at night.
Just to pause really quickly for those folks who are on desktop computers, there should be a chat button option that you can click on and you can see the chat. It should pull up onto your main screen, but I will say that I'm currently on Chrome as my desktop browser, so it may not function on Firefox or other browser types. So that might be where you're running into an issue.
On the last meeting, there were issues with people not seeing the chat. I had that issue. I signed out of the meeting, I signed back in, and then it seemed to appear for me. So if anybody wants to join or try that, it might help.
Yep, absolutely. If you'll try that as well, if you're still not able to see chat, it might refresh for you there. Now, was there anyone, or sorry, David, did staff go ahead and address those questions, or did we have other parts?
Yeah, we got
a
chat.
If you'd like me to, I'd certainly try, if I can get a word in edgewise.
Yeah. I think that this guy's
So essentially, basically, the two cross sections and the two options that we've presented. We presented one with protected bike lanes, which from bicyclist standpoint and a bicyclist safety standpoint is always going to be a preferred option. We included the option to have the sharrows and the parking on both sides because essentially as part of question number 2, nearly 11% of the respondents indicated they wanted parking on both sides of the roadway. And when that was one of the things that people filled in, it was something folks felt was important enough to mention and bring up several times and actually enter that text in for us. So it was something that folks felt strong enough about to mention. As I said, 11% of the respondents on that question felt it was important enough to mention. We saw that recurring theme through the results of the survey. So that is why one of the options that we included was to have the sharrowed bike lanes. As far as vehicular traffic, traveling faster in wider lanes versus not wider lanes, some of that is dependent upon what else is in the vicinity. We're looking at still doing improvements for bump outs. We're looking at doing improvements for crosswalks and those type of things that will still slow down traffic. I don't have a crystal ball, so I can't predict, is traffic going to go 10 miles per hour slower if they have a 10.5-foot lane versus a 13-foot lane? I don't know, David. I can't predict that. Any improvements that we make are going to improve the situation.
Oh, understand. I've sent you information from NACTO and what they say about wider lanes versus narrower lanes. I was asking for a traffic engineer's observation. If you're quoting numbers, if you look at design in the design options where you chose either yes or no, you did have the option for more choices than simply one. But in that, option 2 had 208 decided no's and only 69 decided yeses. There were 3 times in that option, there were 3 times more people who said no to option 2 than said yes to option 2. Comment?
Yes, David, but what you couldn't see was that a lot of the yeses on 3, 4, and 5 were conditional upon not losing parking on both sides of the roadway. Those
I understand.
Are some of the comments you couldn't see.
Understand, but I wasn't commenting on options 3, 4, and 5, simply on option 2. Option 2 is yes or no, and you had 208 decided no's and only 69 decided yeses.
But the point I'm trying to make is if two-sided parking cannot be provided in any option but option 2. So the conditional yeses on 3, 4, and 5 were that parking needed to be provided on both sides of the roadway. And the only option that can do that is option number 2, which is why it is still an option.
I mean, I'll just speak as one individual.
One last thing in terms of numbers. You're talking 30 people, you're talking 10% of the total respondents. Correct me if I'm wrong, Chris. You're talking only 10% of the total respondents saying that they want bike lane, that they want parking on both sides. Is that correct?
On that particular question, there were other comments made.
Oh, understand. I'm talking about all questions. Question 1, 2, and 4. The total number of the maximum number of people who even wrote in bike lane. I'm sorry, two-sided parking. The total number on question 1 there were 30. On question 4 there were 22. And if you had 277 respondents, that equates to only 10% of the total number of respondents.
Yeah,
am I misreading that?
Can I make a point on that too, though, just to kind of compound? If only 17% of the respondents were on Richmond, even if that is the case, most of the yeses or whatever, you know, the option 3, I guess, you're not getting a sample of those impacted by the parking issue in this survey. You've got less than 50 people impacted from the survey on the parking issue.
As I indicated, between the folks that live within 2 blocks of Richmond and the folks that live on Richmond, that was 75% of the respondents. So we did capture the audience that we were trying to capture with the survey.
But you're only capturing a portion of the people impacted by the parking issue, though, a very small portion.
I do understand that, and we've done the maximum amount of outreach that we can do. I mean, we're here having public meetings, you know, we're posting on Nextdoor. You know, lots of folks have been talking to all of your neighbors. I know you've been talking to all of your neighbors as a group. All I can ask you all to do is to respond to the survey.
Just one last point on that. I mean, my perspective changes on this, even if I live on Belmont. I mean, if I live on Richmond.
Took him out.
Brian, I think he just froze on it. Oh, there we go.
Oh, I guess my point is on the survey, I know we want to make a decision for the greater good here, but my perspective would change if I lived on Belmont and I'm a biker, because I want a bike lane on Richmond where I don't live, but I do happen to live on Richmond. So I want to be able to park in front of my house. So address how you're kind of accounting for these different perspectives. And I feel like the parking issue is really not captured in this survey because you've got so few respondents that actually live on the street.
We're taking the information that we're getting and we are condensing it. And then we're taking it to, we will take it to management and have a discussion over what section management feels is the appropriate section based on the data that we have.
One question I had was just looking at option B, it appears that the parking lane is 8 feet versus in option A, the parking lanes are 9 feet. If we take into account 2 8-foot parking lanes and a 2-foot buffer, it would seem like we could have a bike lane, 2 parking lanes, and 2 travel lanes all fit in there. Is there a reason why we can't reduce the parking lane to 8 foot on both sides?
Sir, the team has looked at the team has looked at this geometry every which way, and we could not find a safe way to put in bike lanes and parking on both sides and have buffers and be able to fit everything that needed to fit in the cross section between these curbs.
Okay, so what you're saying is there are other considerations not in here with regard to geometry.
Yes. Yes.
So I saw that Michael Massey, I saw that you had your hand raised earlier, and I apologize that we weren't able to get to you a little bit sooner. If everyone would, before we unmute and start making comments, I would highly request that you please use the hand raise feature if you can, so that way we can keep everything moving slowly, moving forward, and we don't have people jumping over each other. I know everyone wants to get their say in and have their questions and that sort of thing, but it's all virtual, so we're gonna run into technical issues here and there, and I appreciate your patience with that. So Michael, if you would go ahead.
A couple quick points. I'll try to be brief. In regards to the survey that was filled out, David's question about the number of no's, I can only respond my personal way that I took the survey. I looked at the options for half a day, and then I filled out the survey, and then I went to the meeting, and ideas were being discussed, and it kind of changed the way that I thought about it. But the survey was already over. So I probably was one of the ones that put a no in the survey for item number 2. But since then, I think my mind has changed, and I felt at some point during that first meeting there was kind of a wave of, at least that was my take on it, was a wave of opinions in the chat and in the discussion when we realized that there was no other option to keep parking on both sides. A lot of people seemed to kind of sway away from favor of the bike lanes. Now, that's just my opinion on how I felt that meeting was going. But since there hasn't been another survey till now, I don't know how accurate those results are. In terms of living on Richmond versus nearby, I didn't write in that I lived on Richmond because I didn't choose to write in my own text. I do live within 2 blocks. I'm on the, ground zero. I'm on Richmond, but it's also technically within 2 blocks. So some of the data in that I'm going to take with a grain of salt. Onto the bike lanes versus parking. I haven't had anybody come over to my house in a year, but during the normal course of a year pre-COVID, we would have guests come by. There's deliveries, there's garbage trucks, there's other things. When I look at the option with bike lanes, I feel like we're going to put bikes at risk because cars, delivery trucks, landscapers are still going to move to that side of the road. So bikes will have to swerve around them. Cars and drivers and the mentality of the access from Matilda to Abrams, I don't think will change. And so when I'm just trying to pull over to the side of the road to get ready to come in my driveway, cars zip around, speed around me. Now, maybe speed bumps will help them to slow down, but if there's no traffic in the bike lane, and there's a gap in traffic in the oncoming way, cars are still going to speed around whatever's in their way, I feel. So even if there's a bike lane, cars are going to stop there, and then bikes and oncoming traffic are going to be making passes. Whereas if you had dedicated parking and a Sharrow lane, well, I'm not an expert on Sharrows, but if you had dedicated parking and vehicular traffic lanes, there may not be as much need to speed around. Final point, and I'll get off. On Matilda, I feel like the bike lanes are 99% empty. I rarely see people using them. And so when I drive down there, I now feel as a driver that I have 10 feet to my left and 5 extra feet to my right, where I don't have obstructions, I don't have obstacles that I have to pay as close attention to. Even though there's a painted lane, I rarely see it occupied. I would fear that if we did that on Richmond, the high-speed traffic of people trying to cut through already would see empty bike lanes and the 2.5-foot buffers between the traffic and the bike lane, find that more of an open highway. Even if you painted the lines to 11 feet or 10.5, visually, I feel like I slow down more when I see parked cars than I do when I see an empty bike lane. Now, if bike traffic increases in the city, changes things, I don't know about that. So I'm going to sign off. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
And I will say, Michael, to address the comments on the survey itself, one of the things additionally in noticing that we had a fair amount of duplicate submissions and we're requiring sign-ins now at this point. Another thing that a problem that you brought up is that, people who would come to the meeting and filled it out afterwards perhaps had a different perspective once they had that information as to those who filled it out initially before. So as part of that, that's why we're introducing the survey now after the meeting, and that's when we're going to publicize it, as well as introducing additional questions at the start so that we can filter the data down to see responses we're getting from folks who have attended these meetings, who are getting the information and are making those informed decisions, versus those who may not attend the meeting but might still want to share their 2 cents. Moving forward, I did see Travis Richards had his hand raised as well. So Travis, if you go ahead and unmute.
Yeah, thank you very much. I guess just a couple of questions for Christina. The first is I think that a very common theme among all of our concerns, regardless of which option we prefer, is safety and the speed that we typically see people driving. Something I didn't see included in the plans was additional 4-way stop signs at cross streets that would probably help to slow traffic, and then also hopefully deter a lot of the commercial traffic and the pass-through traffic that we see on Richmond. And so I wanted to know if that had been considered or if it was an option as part of the plan. And the second question is, I didn't know if in y'all's estimates about the amount of traffic and parking that we're going to be seeing on Richmond, if y'all had considered the new apartment complex. And so I think I saw something that's going to be another 600 to 800 people that are going to be living right there at Richmond and Matilda. And so I don't know what effect that would have, but I just wanted to know if that was something that y'all had considered. And so stop signs and the apartment, just wanted to know if y'all thought about those.
In terms of looking at 4-way stops, in order to put in a 4-way stop, we have to do a specific traffic study for that. With being in the middle of COVID, traffic patterns are not the same as they would have been a year to year and a half ago. So a lot of the traffic studies that we may have typically done have been put on hold. It is something that we can look at and we can approach and do with our transportation department and look at some of these intersections. It is not something we've done up to this point, basically because traffic patterns are not normal right now, as many of you have noted. Regarding the apartment complex, that is going to likely increase traffic on Richmond, which is yet even an additional reason to keep the lanes at 10.5 feet on the option B as we proposed, to give that extra half a foot for safety purposes. Traffic on Richmond, as we said in the presentation, is about 6,100 vehicles a day as of 2019. We don't have any more current counts than that because of circumstances and, again, COVID. And I hate to use the COVID excuse, and I've really tried not to, but in this circumstance, when it comes to traffic patterns, there's not a lot I can say other than COVID. So yes, we do expect traffic's going to increase with the apartment complex. Whether they go west, whether they come east, we can't really say right now, but we do anticipate it's going to increase. And even more urgent, why we get our traffic calming measures down to try and calm the traffic down and lower the speed.
Just a quick follow-up question on that is that as it relates to the traffic studies and what it would take for us to, I understand that right now things are not normal, but who is the proper contact that those of us in the neighborhood should contact, just to make sure that it's not something that kind of slips through, that we can make sure that it gets addressed whenever the time is right?
And I'm sorry, I have something to add. When is normal or non-COVID supposed to end so that these type of studies could be done? I'm just curious because I don't know that it will end, and I think traffic patterns have changed because people are working from home and they've already adjusted. So I'm curious what the shift in traffic patterns, or if it's going to change. What is that? What information do you have to give me insight into that?
Hey, Catherine, are you still on the line?
I am, and sorry, don't mind the cooking sounds in my background. I was just thinking about that, and I think one of our sources is regional travel models, and and traffic studies that they're doing right now and tracking that on a monthly basis. And it has been trending back up to normal, but that's something that we're going to be monitoring going forward just to see. I mean, we are not in the medical industry. I don't think we can forecast that ourselves, but I think trends are looking like in the next year, but we can't really say.
Well, just to give you a little bit of insight, I used to drive to Farmers Branch every day, and my office just let go of their lease, and I'm going to work from home forever. So I do think that this new normal is happening and is now. And so I think that should be taken into consideration when we're looking at, should we do a traffic study for a stop sign? This is just my opinion, but I'm just throwing it out there, and I would really like to understand when a reasonable time would be to request that study about a stop sign. Thanks.
And Catherine, I don't know if the transportation department has started doing those studies yet or not.
We really haven't. And we just did traffic counts over on Gaston, and they were still 20% less than last year. So we are still shying away from that.
I think you'll probably see that continue to be less due to the people working from home, but that's just my insight.
Thank you. We appreciate that. Before we move on to the next hand wave, I'm going to go ahead just to make sure we're not losing some of these chat questions. And it's on the same thread. Steve Youngblood asked, if parking is removed from one side, how do we envision that impacting delivery service vehicles, coming to people's homes without it affecting the traffic flows, i.e. FedEx, UPS, Amazon, etc. And then also in the same vein, how would, and this may not be something we necessarily have an answer to, but do we know if trash and bulk trash service would be impacted as part of the street change?
Hytham, would you mind taking the question about the bulk trash pickup? Because I know you had looked into that already a little bit for me.
Yes, we did actually. I guess west of Skillman, the trash pickup is right now the people are putting their trash cans on the street, which is in front of the curb. So that will be an issue. We will have to somehow maybe have the people put the trash cans on the sidewalk or the parkway, which is behind the curb. Otherwise, it will be an issue with the bike lanes. So that will have to change the way it's been done in the past. So I guess the main change will be people will have to put the trash cans in the parkway, not on the street. If bike lanes are going to be on that side, or the parking is going to be removed.
Got you. Yeah. I see we have a couple more hands raised, and I'm unfortunately I'm going to go ahead and skip over Travis and Melanie, just because I know that we had some comments from you earlier. Actually, Melanie, yours was specifically on just the features of Teams, but if you would go ahead, if you had any comments about the streets now.
I'm sorry, can I jump in and clarify my question real quick? This is Steve Youngblood. You just read my question. Can I clarify my question real quick?
Yeah.
Regarding, first of all, to clear up why we put our trash cans in the street, because I was specifically yelled at by the trash pickup guy to put it in the street. I guess because the street dips towards the curb, and the crane or whatever, the lever could not pick up the trash cans. He was literally breaking my curb apart over several years with the little crane thing. So the curb in front of my house is now destroyed from him trying to pick up the trash cans when it was in my median. So he actually yelled at me and told me to put it in the street. But actually, so the question though really is, if the parking is moved to one side of the street, and I'm assuming, because I walked the 6,000 block of Richmond several times looking at the cars, especially on a Saturday afternoon, but throughout the last several months. So the 6,000 block has quite a few cars. So if we move those to one side, I'm assuming that those who have the cars parked in front of them would have no place to put their trash. So as it is, I will have my bulk trash out there, and it will get skipped because somebody has parked in front of my house from across the street, or from the next down, from the house down, or whatever. So, my bulk trash will be left out there for 2 months. The same with trash. If I can't put my trash can out because all the cars are now on one side of the street, then how would they get to my trash cans? And then also on the other side of the street, there's the bike lanes and stuff. So, I don't know how, you put the trash cans out in the bike lanes or how that would work. But, and that's the same vein, as you said, with the delivery trucks as well. But, so yeah, that's specifically really what I was getting at.
Gotcha. Thank you, Steve. We'll go ahead and Melanie, unmute and ask your question or make a comment.
Thank you. I think that in either option, the biggest problem with Richmond is that the travel lanes are too wide. So the best thing that we could do, and engineering studies support this, is to narrow those lanes. And whether it's bike lanes or parking, if the narrowing only happens with the proposed rubber bump outs, then cars can just as easily run over the little rubber bump outs. So also in design studies, and Abrams is an example locally if you want to go look, but concrete bump outs are by far the safest narrowing device because the cars can't drive over them. The drivers get used to where the new curb is. They protect parallel parking. They very effectively narrow and shorten the crosswalks. So either any kind of pedestrian, a wheelchair user, a bike user, they have an elevated concrete curb to stand on. They can see the cars can see them, and they are in a protected location. The rubber curbs proposed don't do any of those. They don't have those benefits. So if the concrete bump outs in my mind are by far the most important way to narrow the street safely, and they provide so many more benefits to help narrow the street and slow down the traffic. So they can, stormwater is not a problem. I'm a designer. I've done streetscapes. I've done park lanes. I've done projects just like this. And concrete bump outs are the safest route to go because they just provide a safe refuge for pedestrians crossing the street. And this project is not just about people moving down Richmond. It's about people crossing Richmond and getting to the park and to Lakewood Shopping Center and to neighbors across the street. So I would just really hope that concrete bump outs would be more strongly considered. Thanks.
Thank you, Melanie.
I see up next with the hand raised, we have Nick Mogensen, and then after that, we'll go ahead and see if we can address some more of the chat questions. So Nick, if you go ahead and unmute.
Yeah, hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey, so just want to say, really happy with what you guys have drafted right now as far as speed tables and bump outs in the eastern part of the street. As you know, I turned in that petition that my neighbors and I put together to try and get some of those features. And I just want to know, I saw comments from other neighbors that live maybe further west along Richmond Avenue that are also interested in the RRFPs or Bs and the speed tables. And I was just wondering, how will you guys determine in the end, how many of those are allocated, where they go, if it changes from the proposal you put up on the screen between now and construction? If you could just speak to that a little bit.
It's a combination of working with our transportation department and looking at the traffic volumes that are a little bit off right now because of COVID. But it's primarily working in conjunction with our transportation department, looking at the geometry of the intersections, and then just making those final determinations. Once we have a final plan, we will post it on the blog. So in April, along with the typical section, we'll post that in the beginning of the month, but closer to the end of the month when we have our final plans prepared, we'll go ahead and repost a diagram similar to what we have in the presentation showing where the features are going to be, if that would work for all of you.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I appreciate that. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Before we move to the next hand raise, I do see a question that just popped up that I think would be helpful to address. Again, coming from Michael. Why does option A maintain the 13-foot wide travel lane? Why not widen the parking and extend the bump out slightly, thereby reducing the travel lane width?
Hey, Catherine, do you want to jump in on any of these lane width typical section questions?
Sure, I would be happy to. Well, I think the reason that it normally isn't extended, I mean, 9 feet is really pushing it. I think the reason it normally isn't extended further than that is because it can become a hazard for vehicles in the travel lane. There starts to become a bigger gap between the cars parked along the curb and the cars moving in the travel lane. The cars in the travel lane might start to drift closer to the cars along that are parked, and so might not be prepared for the bump outs as they approach them. It's really just based on national guidance, but I think that's kind of the reasoning behind it.
Got you. Thank you for that. And then I see our last hand raised right now.
I was going to ask why can you look at that modification?
We can look and see if there are any modifications to that can be made to this. But I'm not anticipating that we're going to widen that parking lane any based on the comment from Catherine.
Up next, we have a hand raised by, sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, Trion and Seth.
Yes, it's you. Yes, it's me. You said it correctly. Thank you. And thank you all for putting this together and going through this. I know this has been a long endeavor, and I know that we've been referencing COVID throughout it, but I know that this has been going on for a few years. So I know it's been a lot of conversations. And I go a little bit back and forth on what I think. I do live on Richmond, and I park on Richmond. I have 2 teenage girls. Watch out, they're driving on the roads. So the part that makes me a little bit like I can't quite figure it out is because the 2 options are so drastically different. And it feels a little bit, so in psychology, it feels a little bit like you're forcing the hand. And so it seems like there'd be something that's a combination of both of them. And I do understand geometry, and I understand basic math. And so I'm curious as to the question that was asked earlier around having 1 bike lane and the buffer of that lane. So is it either or? Is it parking on both sides and having a co-biking and co-vehicle lane, or having 2 bike lanes and parking on one side? And so I know that you answered the question earlier saying you looked at the geometry, but I still don't understand it. So if you can maybe go over that with me. I'll ask it again, is the requirement 2 bike lanes? And does the buffer, is it 2.5 feet is the requirement? Because the math is if it was 2 feet in 1 bike lane, you'd be able to accommodate everyone on this call, it seems like.
Okay, we cannot put, if you're asking, and I think I might have read this in the chat. If you're asking, can we put essentially 1 5-foot or 6-foot bike lane in to accommodate 2-way bicycle traffic? No, we absolutely cannot. I'm gonna thumb up here in this presentation here. Basically, if I go the right direction, that would help. Our former option 5 showed basically a cycle track, whereas we would combine the 2 bike lanes into one location. But basically, in order to do that, we have to have 11 feet of space to make that happen.
Okay, that math makes sense. I didn't understand that from earlier. So the 2 bike lanes is having bike lane go both directions, and that's not a space.
Yeah, bicyclists are similar to cars. We can't have them traveling in the same lane, coming at each other, because they'll collide head on. We can't basically put them in a position where they have to play chicken with each other, for lack of better terms.
Right, I gotcha. Okay, so thank you for answering that question.
Yeah.
We appreciate it. And I see that you also have a lot of questions in the chat, but I saw Amy, that you had your hand raised a little bit earlier. I apologize. We were trying to get through everyone's questions, so I know that we had you buried there, but if you wanted to go ahead and unmute and ask your questions as well, or I can kind of read them one by one if that's the way you'd prefer to go.
Ryan, I think that the previous question was my question, which was, is there any way to consolidate or, lessen the footage being allotted to the bikers? And I myself am a biker, so I'm not trying to cause problems for them. But could it be shifted where some direction is going on Belmont, or we're just more condensed, and then everyone sort of gets their way? But it sounds like that's not an option.
Got you. And I'll go ahead and see, because this is a question that's been repeated a couple times from Brian and Diana Losak, from several folks. Why is this decision being made? They want to know why it's being made in the context of a survey, and instead of rooting in parking studies, technical data, and expert opinions. I understand there's no crystal ball, but this type of forecasting is in the closet in terms of analysis. So do we have an answer for that as well?
Basically, we are trying to ensure that we are being as transparent as possible with getting public input and making sure that the public is involved. We know we're not going to be able to make everyone happy, but we're trying to provide the best possible project that we can that incorporates as many features as we can to improve safety and improve mobility in the area. But we want to make sure that we are incorporating the input of the people that are going to be impacted every day. So the final decision won't necessarily be based fully on the survey, but it will definitely be a consideration point.
Okay, let's see here. I don't see any other additional hands raised. Let me see if I can find some other questions that we may have not addressed. Oh, Kimberly, if you'd go ahead and unmute.
Thank you. I live close to the stoplight. One of the things that I wanted to bring up was something that hasn't been talked about yet. I live near the stoplight at Richmond and Matilda. And since they've put that stoplight up, that light shines through my bedroom window 24/7. So I ask you kindly, please do not do that to the people on Delmar by having a flashing light on the crosswalk all the time. That this is a neighborhood full of families. We do live, eat, and sleep here. And, besides all the parking issues that have been addressed, I just think it's important that the city realizes this is a community of great neighbors, and I don't want to inconvenience anybody with a light in their bedroom window all the time. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
And I do see, I do believe that there's still, or at least based off of Kevin's comment, there's still some confusion or might not have been fully answered on the garbage issue. since they've mentioned that they don't necessarily have usable alleys. Do they if the parking option was reduced, would they have to just put cans at the end of the driveways? Would they do them in the street? How would that exactly work? Do we know?
That will be something that we would have to get the final determination with our sanitation department.
Okay. Let's see here. Sorry, I'm scrolling up through. I'm going to try to find a couple more questions, and then if anyone didn't have any other specific questions, just in regards to everyone's time this evening, we'll have to close it out. But as we said before, if you have any other specific questions that might take a little bit more time or require some nuance, more than we can address in a chat window or at the meeting itself, we'll put up, Chris, if you wouldn't mind, go ahead and putting up our contact information as well, so that they have our email addresses. And as well, we'll try to post all updates about the project coming up, as well as this meeting recording. You know, fingers crossed, everything on the technical side of things goes up, so the meeting recording will go up as well as the presentation. So we're going to try to post updates to that site link. But I did see one more with a hand raised. Actually, this is, yeah, Brian and Diana, and I see y'all had several other questions as well, so I appreciate that if you'd go ahead and unmute.
Yeah, just real quick, I wanted to follow up on the response around, you know, the survey, and I think your comment was that you're trying to gather feedback from those that are impacted most in regards to this decision. You know, that being the case, has there been a thought to creating and getting responses of a survey specifically for residents that are on Richmond that are going to be impacted by this decision directly the most? Parking, no parking, you know, everything that goes along with this decision. The residents of Richmond are those that are impacted most. Is there a way to drill down and get feedback from that group? Because the survey right now, I would argue, is not taking into account those impacted most at only 16 point whatever %, less than 50 people on this survey.
I'll jump in real quick and just say that just so you know, many people did door knocking, handing out flyers. The city did it. There were 2 separate private groups that literally went to every single door, met with the person, or gave them a flyer or dropped off a flyer. I don't know what else that they can do. I'll let them talk, but I just want to make sure that that gets said. It wasn't for a lack of effort to get civic participation on this street.
Yeah, no, and I think had someone not done that at our home, we wouldn't have heard about it either. And you know, maybe folks are indifferent to it, but it just seems like there's a lot more voices being heard that are not on the street than are. And when everyone keeps going back to the survey results, it just doesn't seem like it's encapsulating, you know, those impacted most, as you said. So I'll leave it at that.
Well, and one of the changes we've made with the survey, as I indicated, is that an email address is going to be required. So that should eliminate some of the duplication on survey responses. We have made a change in the question on your relationship to the Richmond Avenue project, and we have added the option of I live on Richmond for this next survey. So that is an option that people can select. So hopefully we'll get better information on folks that actually live on Richmond as opposed to the within 2 blocks, because that is still an option as well. You know, we've advertised the meetings on Nextdoor. We've advertised them on the city's website. As was indicated, we know folks have been out there knocking on doors and doing a lot of publicity, you know, for these meetings. You know, we've used every resource that we know how, or that we have in, you know, this time and age as far as technology to get the information out regarding these meetings and regarding the surveys. So, you know, we've really tried to make sure that we got the information out. And, you know, 317 responses, even if, or 30 some of them were duplicates, a total of 277 responses on a survey is an astronomical number of responses. It was a lot of information and a lot of data. We do not typically get that number of responses on a survey. So I think we did a pretty good job of getting the word out. Hopefully the second survey that we do, the folks that live on Richmond will indicate that they are on Richmond and that they will, give us the feedback, because that's really what we're looking for.
And I see we have some Trion and Seth, I think we got you earlier as well. Kimberly was another hand raised again there.
Sorry, no, I didn't.
Oh, no worries. I appreciate
No,
it.
I live on Richmond. I don't want the my parking or my neighbor's parking taken away. I understand everything. I guess I clicked it twice. I'm sorry.
Oh, no worries. Yeah, technical difficulties. We all understand. Okay. From then just going down the list, I see two more hands raised again from Melanie and Michael. And then with that, I think we'll try to close out the meeting after that as well. So Melanie, if you would, go ahead.
Quick clarification, if Christine, if you will, would you, for the question about the flashing pedestrian lights, that would not be an ongoing, a continual flashing, if I understand correctly, would be the kind that the pedestrian pushes the button to indicate that they're crossing at that moment, and then they go off. Is that correct?
Yes, Melanie, you're correct. The rectangular rapid flashing beacon is a traffic control device that is only activated when someone pushes the button to cross the roadway. So it's not like a traffic signal that is on 24/7.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that Kimberly understood that, so she didn't feel like there'd be this, bothersome flashing light.
That.
Yeah, gotcha.
I just didn't want to do what has been done to me, to my neighbors. Yeah. I wish the stoplight was a stop sign.
Understood.
But I do, people are taking their lives crossing the streets to get to their cars if parking is on one side. I don't know if they'll use that light or not, but thank you.
And then to answer the question about an email distribution list, certainly if you email myself, ryan.wagner@dallascityhall.com, or anyone of us associated on the contact information page and ask that you could be added for updates in regards to the project, we will try to get those to you as soon as we can, whenever they are available. We do try to post updates on the website when we can as well, and once again, leaning on Chris here, not to use the COVID excuse, but COVID combined with some fun weather that we've had in the past couple weeks has made things more complicated for everyone. So we try to make those updates as fast and efficient as possible, but that is going to be the place where we try to get information out as much as we can. But if you would like specific emails to go back and forth whenever we send out updates, certainly please email me and I will make sure that you get added to that list. I know that we try to keep David and Nick and some other folks who have reached out to us personally updated on what's going on with the project as well, so I'd be more than happy to do that. Let's see. Try to find one last question here. Here's one that I haven't seen yet and is more of a technical question, so we'll go ahead and ask it again from Michael. Does resurfacing the road include repouring the concrete curbs as well as part of the project?
We'll repair curbs where we need to, but no, it does not include taking out all of the curbs, just basically repairing damages.
Got you. And then last question I see here from, and I haven't read from Tom, how do these current options anticipate slowing traffic?
Can you repeat that, Ryan? I'm sorry.
How do the current options that we presented actually slow traffic, or do we anticipate them slowing traffic?
I'm going to answer this kind of qualitatively and see if that gets the answer that they're looking for. Essentially, when we add the curb bump outs, it narrows the roadway in specific locations. When we add the speed tables, it will force people to slow down at those specific locations. When we add crosswalks, it will increase visibility for striping in those locations. So when people are actually crossing the roadway, there'll be some additional visibility. And obviously, if we go with option B, and I'm going to bring this back up here for just a minute. You know, if we do go with this option B, you know, the travel lanes are narrowed down, which should create some constriction for the travel folks in the vehicles. It should slow them down, depending on if they're seeing, you know, bicyclists or things like that. But as I said, we do have the curb bump outs that actually constrict the roadway width as well. And even on option A, when we have the parking lane, we are still talking about putting bump outs in here that will constrict this travel lane. So it's not just going to simply be paint out here. There will be physical constriction of the travel lane at intersections where we have the bump outs. So that will also help to slow traffic down. So between speed humps, the bump outs, the actual crosswalks themselves, that will all constrict the lanes of traffic, and it should help to slow traffic down. Did that answer the question that was being asked?
I think so, but also someone added to piggyback off of Tom's question, will we be adding signage to communicate the slower speed as part of it?
I do not know that we will be changing the speed limit of the roadway, because that is essentially based on the 85th percentile speed that the traffic is traveling on the roadway. So to actually change the speed limit of the roadway, we would have to do a speed study, which again, they're not being done right now because of COVID and traffic.
Okay. I see one last hand being raised from Travis Richards, and after that, we will go ahead and close out the meeting. So Travis, if you'd go ahead and unmute.
Sure. Yeah. So Christina, regardless of which option is chosen, will a speed study be done after that? Because, you know, hopefully, I think that all of our hope is that whichever one we go with, it's going to slow traffic down. And so hopefully that 85th percentile, because I believe right now, I mean, like, maybe a speed study would show that people are starting to travel slower, in which case we could get the speed limit lowered. So will a speed study be done after the improvements are made?
And I think that's something after construction is completed that we can definitely talk about, because it doesn't do any good to do that before construction is completed, before we make the changes. Yep. So it's definitely something that we can talk about after construction and look at doing. If we think traffic has slowed down significantly and we want to change that speed limit, we can definitely look at it at that point.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Thank you for that clarification.
Fair enough?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. All right. So just one more time, option A, option B, we're asking you, do you prefer option A or option B in the survey? And if option B ends up being the selected option, do you prefer parking on the north or the south side of the roadway? I'm going to bring this up one more time so that you have the QR codes in front of you for the surveys. You can hit those QR codes right now if you'd like. And again, we want your input. So please tell your neighbors, have them go do the survey. We want to hear from you. You know, that's why we have these meetings, and that's why we talk to all of you and do this, because we want to hear from you. This is your roadway. You're the folks that actually drive on it, and you're the folks that fund these projects. So we want to make sure that we hear from you. We appreciate your time tonight, and thank you so much for all of your input. Again, if you have additional questions, here's our contact information. So I hope all of you continue to stay safe, and thank you again for your time tonight. We are adjourned.
Thank you.
the survey info again?
Yes, Chris, can we
Here
scroll
we go,
back out?
right there.
And we'll, and once again, we'll be posting the links to the survey as well on that DallasCityNews.net, Richmond Avenue, Gilman Street project, then the English and Spanish links as well as soon as possible tomorrow so that everyone has access to it there. And then we'll go ahead and share that blog post links on the neighborhood next door as well. So there'll be a couple different ways that we're trying to get the word out about it, but we appreciate your participation.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all.